Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and it is the Tuesday before New Comic Book Day. I think it's December 16th. And normally on Tuesdays, I would do like a recap of last week's episodes and kind of tack that on to the beginning of Wednesday's video. But Wednesday is looking to be kind of an oddly busy day. So I'm going to try to get a video out tomorrow that's New Comic Day orientated. But it might not happen, and it might be Thursday that goes up. So to try to beat the algorithm gods, which are always working against me, I figured I'd toss out another Cornerbox Classics video, because I got through the second week of March, the books that I would have picked up if I had pedaled up to the shop. Got through those relatively quickly. There was some good stuff in there, so I figured might as well knock that out, and you'll either get a New Comic Day video tomorrow, or you'll have to wait until Thursday. I'm sure there are 6 or 7 people who will be heartbroken if they have to wait. So first up, Avengers 220, War Against the Gods, released March 9th, 1982, written by Jim Shooter, pencils by Bob Hall, inks by Dan Green, letters by Joseph Rosen and Janice Chang, and colors by Christy Scheel. I am not super into the Jim Shooter written era of the Avengers so far. This picks up immediately, like, the Avengers have been kind of like pulled to this planet, Babani, where Moondragon has seemingly, like, basically she like called them there to help quell like a rebellion that was happening in the planet. And our heroes are kind of, Iron Man's with Drax, Captain America and Wasp are together, and Thor is with Moondragon, so they're kind of all split apart as they start to piece together the fact that they are clearly being manipulated, much like the population of this planet, by Moondragon. And hope everybody, while they're watching this, is also enjoying tea or coffee or whatever. Artwork by Bob Hall is really great. But like I said, just not a super huge fan of Jim Shooter's writing. So basically, Iron Man convinces, like, Drax that yes, Moondragon is controlling us. Cap and Wasp realize that some of, like, the insurgents that they had just recently fought were now, like, helping pick up after the battle. And kind of everyone realizes that, like, Moondragon is manipulating them. So then there's a solid Drax Thor fight in there, because Thor has been manipulated to be kind of on Moondragon's side throughout this issue. And the big takeaways for this, they like, finally it comes to blows. They realize this is happening. Some of the interesting stuff that happens in this issue is Janet was not aware. She was not around in the issues where Cap and everyone else on the Avengers had found out that Donald Blake is Thor. And so when that happens, she is then left with the realization of, like, oh, our team physician is actually Thor. Wild. And in this battle against Moondragon, Drax is killed. And so that is, like, it was one of those things where I was, like, fully expecting a fake out, but no, that was the truth. And then Janet knocks her out, and then Moondragon is taken to Asgard to face Odin and be judged by Odin. And then there is a sort of a Viking funeral done by the Avengers as like the spaceship goes off with Drax's body and explodes. And so that is the end of Drax. And I'm kind of curious because, like, that Drax, while I'm familiar with him from that era and kind of what cosmic stuff that I have read, I'm kind of interested to see when he pops back up, which inevitably, it's comics, he will. At what point is he a little bit more like the Abnett and Lanning version that I'm slightly more familiar with from reading a lot of like the Annihilation stuff from that like early 2000s cosmic Marvel. So we'll see. But right now, as I move through this Cornerbox Classic thing, I am of the impression that I will never see Drax again. That's how I'm moving. Like, the whole goal of doing this and kind of reading everything is not to judge anything by what I know that comes later, but kind of just be in the moment as though I had pedaled up to the shop to pick up these books and kind of like dig them as they happen in like the vacuum of like, you know, I'm enjoying these as though I was a kid on March 9th, 1982. Like, I did this thing when I did this. This was initially, I did this with the X-Men, where I read everything from the beginning to current day. And I kind of like would only allow myself like to listen to music of the time period of the books that I was reading and kind of like immerse myself in that. And that's a little bit with what I'm doing in the whole Marvel universe. So up next, if I had pedaled up to the shop, oh man, I forgot it upstairs. On one of the record shelves upstairs in our living room, there is a like statue, a little statue guy of this cover. Fantastic Four 243, Shall Earth Endure, released March 9th, 1982, written, penciled, and inked by John Byrne, with letters by James Novak, and colors by Glynis Oliver. I mean, this had to be, like, best cover on the stands that week, for sure. Last issue, Terex shows up and is basically like, you guys have to help me mess Galactus up. And that's kind of where we were, was this fantastic, like, you know, Terex, Fantastic Four punch-up. And it sort of ends with the top couple of floors of the Baxter building being blown apart. And you get that shot showing that, like, it is indeed, in fact, destroyed. The only people that are up there are Frankie Ray Nova and Sue Storm. And, like, Terex has like lifted Manhattan into space, and Sue is putting a bubble over it so that like the general population does not realize what is going on, and doesn't think that like they're all about to die, creating mass panic. So Terex is basically like, you guys gotta tear up Galactus, and you know, obviously Reed doesn't really want to do that because Reed does not technically view Galactus as a villain. And this obviously pisses off Terex. So he goes after Frank. One of the interesting things that I found was like Frankie is sort of like drawn to Galactus in this. She kind of like finds her way. And like Galactus is basically like, Terex, I've had enough of your crap. Blast him and takes away his power. And then this winds up with like the Fantastic Four and the Avengers members that show up, kind of attacking Galactus, and like Thor hits him. Anyways, Reed keeps on trying to stop this from happening because he's like, you guys knock Galactus over, he's going to crush all the people that are on the Earth down below. So like we have to kind of be smart about this. One of the panels that I really liked was like Spider-Man and Daredevil are clearly alerted to what is going on, you know, when this all started happening. And Peter's just like, you know, we should probably sit this one out. Let's let the big guys handle this, which I appreciated. You know, Doctor Strange shows up. It's the whole gang against, you know, Galactus. It's a fun superhero punch-up as they try to take down Galactus. You get a great rubber band man thing with Thing and Mr. Fantastic to eventually topple Galactus, which would have been cool to see in Fantastic Four: The First Steps. And then basically, like, as he falls, Reed is like, he realizes that, like, they need to save Galactus. And so that is sort of where this, like, kind of like upset about what's going on, but, you know, realizing, like, you know, he was brought here basically by Terrax, not necessarily because, like, Galactus had agreed to leave us alone. So, because he is, you know, in a predicament, we need to help him out. And I don't think all of the heroes are going to be thrilled about that. So that's where Fantastic Four is at that point. Okay. I would have picked up Marvel Superhero Contest of Champions #1, A Gathering of Heroes, released March 1982, March 9th, 1982. My issue is signed by Pablo Marcus there when I met him a few years ago. This is plotted out by Stephen D. Grant and Mark Grunwald, written by Bill Mantlo, with great pencils by John Romita Jr., inks by Pablo Marcus, letters by Joseph Rosen, and colors by Andy Yankis and Patricia DeFalco. So I didn't even know that this existed until I was doing the big X-Men read years and years ago when I started that, and kind of like finding issues where X-Men characters had shown up that I had missed, that had like fallen through the cracks when I was younger. And so first time I read this was a few years ago. I will eventually get to Secret Wars when we get to that year, but Secret Wars is not my favorite. As you can obviously tell by how I felt about Jim Shooter's writing in Avengers, he's not exactly always my cup of tea. I've enjoyed the stuff that he did with Dazzler, but Secret Wars just didn't do it for me. And I kind of expected something similar out of this, but was actually pleasantly surprised by the first issue. It is, I mean, there's a great, like, Avengers working out splash page there. And then all your characters start getting plucked out from wherever they are at by the Grand Master. And I mean, when I say every hero, I legitimately mean every single hero, even characters that I was incredibly unfamiliar with. So it is just page after page of these characters like getting plucked out of whatever adventure that they're in at that point, and then you get them all in this fantastic splash page. I last night when I was reading this, I saw the Falcon, like, I'm like, hopefully he's rubbing his eyes, like, kind of like, holy smokes, I can't believe all these heroes are. And it is not him, absolutely, you know, sobbing, because that's what it looks like, he's sobbing. But I imagine that it was meant to be that he was like rubbing his eyes, like, holy smokes, where am I? So basically it's kind of like some of the characters chit-chatting and interacting if they hadn't seen each other in a while. I'm sure there's probably a couple first-timers meeting here in the background, and that is pretty exciting. I'm going to segue here. I'm not even going to there is no segue for this. It's just, I found this interesting. I was watching a video. I can't remember what it was, but someone explained that these marks at the top of comics are where they were distributed, and each color represented like a different region of comics. And after finding that out, I think it's fascinating. I'm like, I really like to figure out which color went where. I don't know, I just thought that was really cool. Anyways, so oh, another thing that I should point out here that I found incredibly, is this, or is this not, like the first appearance of the Illuminati? Like, I thought it was crazy that Black Bolt is obviously missing, but there's Strange, Mr. Fantastic, Professor Xavier, and Iron Man all together. So I was like, oh, I wonder if, I think maybe it was Bendis who came up with the Illuminati. I'm not 100% sure. But I'm curious if this was if that was a reference point for that. Anyways, so clearly the Grandmaster, you know, they're going to play this game, and he is upset about the fact that the Collector was killed by Korvac. And so the whole thing is like set upon this game with a mysterious character who looked, again, I say this like I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be putting my mindset in this idea of not knowing what is coming, but that character that Grandmaster is playing again looks oddly enough like Death to me, that perhaps that is who it's going to be. And so mainly this issue was just set up so that the two people competing against each other could set up their team. This very much felt like two kids sitting down and being like, we're going to pick teams of our action figures and duke it out. And that's exactly kind of what this came across as. So it predates Secret Wars. It's interesting. John Romita Jr. art is really good. I know that people have plenty of issues that they're vocalized about John Romita Jr. I am a big fan of 80s and 90s John Romita Jr. I understand some of the criticism of recent John Romita Jr. stuff, but I am still a really big fan, and I like his work right now on Spider-Man. I'm sure there's probably people out there who are like, you're crazy, but I grew up with him, love his stuff, think he's good, look forward to his art. And that is in a time period where he was at his absolute peak, and he gets to draw every single superhero in the Marvel Universe. This was another thing that was very cool at the time. There's a whole guide here explaining who each and every character was that was plucked out of their respective books or whatever and dropped into that. Up next, a title that I do not normally read, but if the X-Men appeared or X-Men adjacent characters appeared in it, I would pick it up for sure. So Rom Spaceknight number 31, West Virginia Reel, released March 9th, 1982, written by Bill Mantlo with pencils by Sal Buscema, inks by Joe Sinnott, letters by Rick Parker, and colors by Ben Shawn. And yep, 100% don't really know that much about Rom. I have the action figure. I dig the action figure. I have friends who are really into Rom Spaceknight, but my only kind of idea of who Rom is when X-Men characters are involved. So I saw that the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants was featured in this issue when I was doing my great continuity reread of all of the X-Men stuff. And that actually gets addressed here with this and the next issue. Because, people oftentimes are like, oh, they do a really terrible job of, keeping hold of continuity right now because so many characters appear in so many books in the same month. And you have the opportunity through hindsight when you're rereading stuff later on to kind of make it fit those appearances. Like, I make these ROM issues happen in my X-Men reread a few issues before Uncanny X-Men number 158, and you'll see why. But it's interesting that these run stands at the exact same time because they're basically saying, like, you've also got to do that. So ROM number 31, it opens up with a character I am unfamiliar with, although I believe his first appearance was in that collection that the guy had recently purchased. But I did not keep that. But Torpedo's facing off against Dire Wraith. He was obviously hanging out with Rom in the issue before this. I don't have it. Then you get like a prison kind of like chain gang of convicts are working on the side of the road, like clearing the snowy path, clearly in, I would imagine, Virginia, considering that the book is called West Virginia Reel. And it's like a Stark prison thing where they are trying to transport Blob, Avalanche, Destiny, and Pyro, who have been picked up post Avengers Annual number 10. And I believe between this, there's an Incredible Hulk issue, I think 263, where Avalanche breaks out of prison and faces the Hulk stupidly. And so one of the chain gang prisoners that's clearing the way for this prison convoy in the snow winds up tripping, kind of takes the rest of the guys down with him, and the truck can't quite stop in the snow. So out of nowhere, here comes Rom. He lands in front of it and stops the truck. So they think they're being attacked by Rom. So because this is a Stark thing, there's obviously thrusters in the bottom of it. It detaches from the wheels and flies off, leaving like a couple of the guards and the chain gang guys stuck in the snow with Rom. And so obviously the guards start shooting at Rom. He, points his little ray gun at him, chases them away, and then the convict, one of the smooth-talking ones, basically explains to Rom, who clearly doesn't have an understanding of what's going on here or who these guys are, that they're slaves. And Rom's like, I'm the protector of a people of slaves, and I don't want that. So he lets these guys go, and they're like, there's a lot more of us, and points them in the direction of the prison. So Rom's obviously going to catch up to this prison. So the convoy lands, they get them in there, and then Rom shows up as they're kind of bringing the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants in there, and they introduce them to a woman that is Rogue, and the Warden is tied up somewhere, and Mystique is obviously shapeshifted into the Warden. So now the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are loose, and the guards are all busy with, taking care of Rom. And so hilarity ensues in this, then it's Rom versus the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants once he starts realizing what's going on. And then he is able to subdue those members, and Mystique and Rogue and Destiny are able to escape. And then the Warden lets Rom know, like, no, you idiot, like, those guys were prisoners and you let them loose. And so then this issue ends with Rogue, Mystique, and Destiny hiding out in this house, and there is a dire wraith named Hybrid there, and that is where this issue ends. And so why I bring this up is clearly this issue continues on into number 32, but on the racks, the last issue that I would have picked up had I pedaled up to the shop on March 9th, 1982, is Uncanny X-Men number 158, The Life That I Led, released on March 9th, 1982, written by Chris Claremont with pencils by Dave Cockrum, inks by Bob Wyachek, letters by Joseph Rosen, and colors by Glennis Ween. And so, obviously, continuity mistake. Technically not a continuity mistake, because once you have all your books, you can kind of fit them in that you want. So I would recommend reading Rom Spaceknight 31 and 32 before you read Uncanny X-Men 158. So, our heroes are still on the island, which I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to know that it's one of Magneto's bases, but they're post dealing with the Brood. Carol Danvers is with them. Peter's back in health. Kitty's thrilled about this. The Starjammers are still there. Dr. Peter Corbeau's there, and Xavier is ill. So Lilandra has Oracle, one of the Starjammers. Or not one of the Starjammers, one of the Imperial Guard. And I'm going to stop this here because even when I was reading this issue last night, I was like, Hasbro needs to get more Shi'ar and Imperial Guard. Like, I appreciate the fact that they did Deathbird recently, but we need to finish off the Starjammers, and we need more Imperial Guards. So, Oracle reaches into Xavier's mind and obviously gets messed up while doing this. And you can clearly see that he is obviously infected with something, which we would know to be the Brood. I don't think she's aware of that. So then Kitty comes in there after the dust settles from this mind probe gone wrong, and is basically like, hey, Senator Kelly's on TV talking smack. So they go and they watch a little bit of this, realizing that things are heating up in the anti-mutant way. And then the Starjammer winds up going to visit Alex and Lorna, who, are just living their life. And Scott shows up and introduces Alex to their dad. So the two of them are hanging out. And basically the X-Men had decided, after seeing the Senator Kelly thing, that they needed to find a way to get rid of any kind of information that the government has on them. This is very the first 2 episodes of the animated series kind of deals with this, where they have to break in for the Mutant Control Act and kind of get rid of any information that they have about the X-Men. It's the same deal here. But they have an in because they have Carol Danvers with them right now. So Logan wears, a military uniform. Storm is a civilian liaison, and Carol Danvers basically leads them into the Pentagon. They don't get far before they run into Rogue, and Carol obviously has a meltdown with this, and then it's the X-Men versus Rogue, because they're clearly at the Pentagon for something else. And Mystique kind of lays low during this because she's obviously been inside of the Pentagon for a while now. And so it's Rogue versus the X-Men. That's kind of the whole thing. And Carol winds up, she gets confronted by Mystique, who is disguised as Nick Fury. She winds up beating up Mystique. The X-Men kind of don't necessarily defeat Rogue, more like they just kind of move her off the table. Storm picks her up in a hurricane and whips her out, and Mystique gets captured, and Carol is able to erase any information on herself that the government has, which she is sort of remiss to do because her memories are obviously gone because of the attack by Rogue, and she gets rid of all of the information that the government has on the X-Men. So that is sort of, they've got a clean slate here in Uncanny X-Men number 158, and that's where that ends. So those are the books that I would have picked up March 9th, 1982. Yeah, so that is about that. New comics and last week's comics, hopefully tomorrow. Worst case scenario, Thursday. After that, I'm kind of I know in the last video, I talked about how Christmas Eve was probably going to be thrown off too, but then I realized after this weekend, I'm basically off for the rest of the year. So I probably will be able to knock out a video on Christmas Eve. I don't know why I keep on yawning. The tea should be keeping me awake. So yeah, I've probably got some Christmas stuff planned. Some hey, these are the comics that I read. Over on the Instagram, which is BaseMint Comics, I've been doing a Christmas comic advent thing where I show off Christmas comics that I read as kind of a countdown to Christmas. Yesterday's was the giant, spectacular superhero holiday grab bag from 1974. These things are fantastic. It's got a ginormous reprint of Marvel Team Up #1. Have Yourself a Sandman Little Christmas. And then there is a really fun, just beautifully drawn Gene Colan Black Widow story in here. So that's a good one. But the other ones are I think night before that I did X-Men number 119, which is the X-Men versus Moses Magnum. But that sort of ends on Christmas when Banshee comes back. Anyways, all that type of stuff. So if you're subscribed here, you should probably follow me over on Instagram so you can check that out. I'm trying to get better about posting to that. If you like what I'm doing here with the Corner Box Classics and the weekly new comic pickups, please comment, and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Yeah, and so new comics tomorrow, and then probably over the weekend, this is a really important Christmas tradition comic book thing by me. So thanks for tagging along for this ride, and I will see you with some new comic book pickups in the next video. Have a great one. Bye.